getting weird.
Yeah, because Tom said we've nouned it, which sounds like a verb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means verbing a noun to explain nouning a verb.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's a circle.
Yeah.
It's a vicious milk circle. No, I know.
Vicious circle of milk.
That either. The circle of milk. Yes.
Circle of milk.
What was the movie? Roger will know this. What's the movie, Roger, where the guy says, "I've got nipples, Brad. Can you milk me?" Do you remember that?
Oh, Meet the Fockers.
Is that it?
Meet the Parents,
Meet
right?
the Parents. Okay.
That was the sequel. Yeah, it was definitely Meet the Parents.
Yeah.
I've got nipples, Brad.
Can you milk me?
That's Robert De Niro's line, I think, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
That's how he pays the bills, dumb movies like that.
Good for him.
I didn't like that movie.
Juice comes from the Latin, milk comes from Germanic, and this is an example of why English is such an adaptable language, because it has pulled in Romance and Germanic languages together, so it often has pairs of words that it can use for different things to become more specialized.
Bunch of hooey, if you ask me.
English will never catch on.
Just talk English.
Yeah.
Me talk funny one day.
You talk funny now. One day. What?
Yeah. Listen to yourself.
When they call it a romantic language, I've never understood that. Does that just mean, hey, baby, what's up? Or is it like something else? Obviously it means something else. But
no, it means if you use it, then you're romantic.
All right. Got it. I want to go.
Very simple.
On the beach. Got it.
And Mike points out in chat that The Circle of Milk is the only memorable song from the Cow King.
The Circle of Milk.
Yeah, performed by Elton John.
Right. Yeah. He wrote some work.
Only one day on Broadway, but what a day.
Yeah.
Free milk day.
They milked it.
Come for the show, leave with a jug.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't drank milk out of a bottle since 2013.
I've never drank milk out of a bottle.
Well, I mean I don't mean like a baby bottle. I mean like milk, like straight up. I haven't had milk the way that you would traditionally do it here now.
Breakfast cereal?
Since then, yeah,
haven't
cereal, no, none of it.
You have not drunk milk since 2013.
I gave up on it because I had a feeling that it was contributing to my inability back then to lose the weight I wanted to. And sure enough, as soon as I quit, I lost like 20 of the pounds I was trying to get rid of.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, did you drink a lot of milk?
I mean, not more than anyone else probably, but and my doctor at the time's theory was like, yeah, some people just certain foods and
have you started drinking again, or
no? No, but that's a great question. Some would say, "Hey, Scott, how can you put some of that weight back on?" And I would say, "I have learned to be skilled at stress eating. I'm very good at it now."
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, and while I don't like to blame others for my
condition,
have to do with me, there's a very specific event that happened that you could trace back to the 40 pounds or so that I gained back, and then.
It's written in every cell.
Yeah, it's on every webpage.
I blame my wife because I was skinny before I got married. I was never skinny.
Roger, you act like you're a huge obese person.
I'm not sure who has worse body dysmorphia, my friend Brian or my friend Roger.
Probably a little of both. I don't know.
You need new friends, Tom.
I was as thin as Tom was in like 2016, and I loved it. And now I'm just kind of back to what I was, and I'm trying to get back there again. Tom is
not as thin as I was last year.
You were really thin. I mean, not in a gross way or anything, but you were always kind of like, oh, I should be this. Tom and I are about the same age. I should be about where Tom is, because you were always like this thing, and I somehow just lost track of that. Like I don't look at you in the same way.
It's the circle of milk. You need to go back to the milk,
right?
And then you can quit the milk.
Oh, see, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now
that's what I'm hearing. Hey, Scott Johnson.
That's me.
Would you like to read line 3 to start today's show?
I'm always up for reading line 3. I like that it's always line 3. There's something comforting about that.
Yeah, it's a solidity, a stability.
Yeah. Line 3 has changed slightly, though. Kind of like almond milk.
Yeah, a little like almond milk.
Right.
What's the next nut we'll be trying to milk?
Just read for everything it's worth, but don't juice it. All right. Ready?
Yep, here we go.
There we go. I'll count you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks to everyone who supports independent tech news directly. If you're not already, become a DTNS member at patreon.com/DTNS.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, November 21st, 2018 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And milking starting to get very old and icy McDonald's Coke, I'm Scott Johnson in Salt Lake City.
And I'm Roger Chang, somewhere on the edge of LA County.
Edge of tomorrow. That's how
Edge of tomorrow, and also the show's producer.
And the edge of sanity.
That's right. Folks, fair warning. If you're not in the United States, you may not realize it's Thanksgiving week here. So there will be no DTNS Thursday or Friday as we give thanks for our blessings and then spend all of our money on Black Friday. But we will be back with full shows on Monday. We're here today, though. Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Facebook is rolling out It's Your Time on Facebook tool that reports how many minutes you're spending using the Facebook app per device. Users can set a time limit and then receive a reminder to stop using Facebook when they reach that limit or ignore it.
Google Assistant for iOS now has a Siri shortcut. Yeah, that's right. Mixing your voices, which lets you use Siri to ask Google Assistant something. Users can say, "Hey, Siri," then the Google wake word to do anything they would normally do with the Google Assistant for iOS.
I love this. I love this. Breaking out of the chains.
Yeah.
It's great. I hope
We're getting there. It's slightly clunky, but I like it too.
I hope Allie does it too. ESET security researcher Lucas Stefanko tweeted that he found 13 gaming apps from a single developer in the Google Play Store that were not gaming apps, but malware. The apps have been installed an estimated 580,000 times or more and presented themselves as driving games, though you never really got to play them because they were all buggy and they would crash. Behind the scenes, however, they were driving you crazy. But no, never mind. Behind the scenes, the original app's icon was deleted and malware was downloaded, which had full access to network traffic, though it's unclear what the malware did besides accessing that. The apps come from a domain registered to a developer in Istanbul. Google has since removed the apps from the Play Store. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the meeting of the big minds. Peace at last. Peace in our time. Cooperation, collaboration. Scott, tell us about it.
This is mind-blowing. Almost as mind-blowing as Google Play not being a great place to go get apps, it turns out. Kind of bums me out. Anyway, hey, listen to this. Microsoft engineers are contributing code to Google Chrome browser. All right, you heard that right. Fine folks behind Edge and before that, Internet Explorer are contributing their code to Google Chrome browser in order to let Chrome run natively in Windows on ARM processors. Which is, you're going to see a lot of smaller devices doing this. Qualcomm is also working on the project. Windows 10 for ARM uses an emulator to run x86 apps, but native apps run better, as you might imagine. And one of those apps that will soon run better would be Google Chrome.
Yeah, Microsoft doing this one right? Windows RT was kind of a wash because they tried to port a few things over. They didn't have emulation, and it just didn't work. Right. Windows for ARM, much better because you can emulate. So anything you have on x86, you can still run. But it's still an emulation. And I've used emulation for quite a few things in my time. I'm sure many of you have too. And you know that it's great when it works, but it doesn't always work. There's always little weird bugs and little weird things. So having a native app is better. And I like that Microsoft is saying, let's put the emulator out there. Let's use that to get people to be able to use these ARM-based devices. And then let's work on native apps. Then we start to move the ecosystem along and reaching out to Google and saying, hey, we get it, man. We'd love if everybody used Edge, but they use Chrome. And if we want people to buy the devices that have Windows 10 on ARM, they're going to need to be able to use a really good version of Chrome. And Google's like, great. Yeah, we'll do that. Love it.
It kind of strikes me interesting that the old areas where it felt like companies weren't budging on competitive stuff are the areas we're seeing crumble away. Sharing code, putting software on competing devices, and also making your own hardware. Like that stuff seems to be going away in a way that seems shocking if you just go back 10, 15 years and look at what things were like then. It was a very different approach by all of these companies. So I love that, but I also feel like they're just moving on to the next fights.
Yeah. AI. They're not the important areas for the bottom line.
Right. Right.
These are ways to get to other things.
Yeah. This is interesting to me.
Yeah.
The information reports that Apple acquired a privacy-oriented AI company called Silk Labs, which crowdfunded a smart home monitoring camera back in 2016 that used facial and object recognition to recognize people and pets, only sending key moments to the cloud and anonymizing data.
Yeah. This one's getting a lot of buzz today. because Apple did it without people realizing it till the information dug this up. And of course, everybody's wondering when Apple's going to come with some kind of AI, smart display, home security system beyond just HomeKit. And this seems to point in that direction. It in and of itself, though, is not surprising. Apple is, doubling down on privacy all the time. Tim Cook's out there on a little campaign talking about how Apple's the only one that cares about your privacy. So buying a privacy-oriented AI company so that they could make these kinds of devices that are often associated with being a little creepy in a way that secures your privacy makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it seems likely that they would, because there's nothing about this that says whatever the company's doing now with the way it shares information or the way it uploads anything and stays in the cloud or whatever, none of that has to stick. And in fact, you would imagine if Apple really got their hands on this and did something to it, they would probably make it so if you wanted to, you could share data with other people over iCloud and say, here's my live security camera, check it out, make sure everything looks good. I'm out of a connection right now because I'm traveling or whatever. I could see them doing all of those things. This, to me, despite the, kind of everyone freaking out about it, really doesn't seem that freaky to me. It seems right in line with something I might expect to come from Apple. And also facial recognition is right in line with what they're trying to do with Face ID and converting a lot of their devices and services to be smarter sort of AI recognition products and not something about your thumb or about passwords. So none of this seems shocking. And it also seems like maybe something cool will come out of it. But I bet we're a ways off from that. Like an Apple branded security system, I think is a ways off.
Hey, I mean, unless they, I don't know, somehow bundled this into the HomePod. I don't know. It's
a new version of a HomePod, maybe.
Yeah, because it's sort of like, okay, well, the HomePod hasn't exactly been selling like hotcakes, but it's not that competitively priced. And some people argue that Siri is not as good as some of the other assistants. So, okay, well, how do you make that better rather than just add some other security camera type thing to the lineup? You wouldn't put it in your Apple TV, mostly because a lot of those are obscured by media centers and stuff. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Just spitballing. Yeah. Amazon's going to launch a newscaster style speaking voice for its voice assistant in a few weeks, so that your text-to-speech readings, particularly of articles, will sound like a newscaster is reading. And if you're having your Echo read you a story, it can sound like it's being read by a news reader. The new style option uses NTTS, or neural text to speech, that uses machine learning to generate the expressive voices. They're also going to improve the default Echo voice as well, so that it sounds more natural. Amazon currently uses an older tech called concatenative speech synthesis. You've probably heard that one described. It's how they do Siri. It's how Google used to do Google Assistant. They just assemble words from individual phonemes. So they have someone record them in a bunch of different ways so that they can sort of fake the expression. The AI version learns the expression and emulates it. Google has also switched to machine learning to generate its voice assistant speech patterns, and Amazon says it only took a few hours worth of data to train the newscaster style voice. Now, here, I want to play a few of these, and you guys tell me what you think.
Okay.
This is the Amazon Alexa we get right now.
$2.2 billion Grand Central Terminal open.
And this is the next
San
one.
Francisco's $2.2 billion Grand Central Terminal open.
And
spanning 3 city blocks.
This one is the newscaster style.
San Francisco's $2.2 billion Grand Central Terminal open. Spanning 3 city blocks. San Francisco's $2 billion transit terminal is open. This is after nearly a decade under construction.
Not perfect, but better. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to fool anybody, but it's definitely. Well, I was about to say it's a lot more pleasant. I don't know. If you just care about the information, maybe you don't care. But as somebody who talks for a living, I think that, that newscaster type voice can be very soothing.
I think it's enunciation and emphasis. I think that stuff's important to the way we hear things. And the better they get at that, I think that's a really good move. And it would also be really cool if they could get to a place where you could pick a style. So, Tom, you're a huge BBC fan. How would you like one of those dry freaking BBC News? The time is 4:30 Greenwich Mean Time guys. One of those guys at the end of your thing, or give us a 1920 answer. Like, I'd take all those variations. It'd be a fun way to consume content that I otherwise might be too tied up to read or push to, send it to an email later or do some other thing with it and never actually get to it. I'd much rather listen to something that seemed at least like it could talk like a person.
You have received a package containing shoelaces.
Yes. Just like that. That's the right emphasis on all of it. Package and shoelaces.
My problem with their example is they have a news story about the building that's already closed because of cracks in its beams. So I'm like, why'd you use the opening of the Transbay Tower in San Francisco as your example? But I guess most people won't notice that.
Sure, why not? Scientists at Harvard, that's right, we're Harvard men today and women, have developed something called a meta-corrector. Yeah, that's right. This improves on compounded lenses used in images. A single layer of nanopillars spaced less than a wavelength apart manipulates the phase, amplitude, and polarization of the light. It's cheaper and more efficient at correcting chromatic aberrations like purple halos than a typical compound lens. I have a friend who's really excited about this, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, it can be used in all kinds of optical systems, and the team plans to continue improving efficiency for use in miniature optical devices. I would assume this would mean cameras and things, because my friend who programs for specifically for Android-based cameras on Android devices, and I don't know who he actually works for, I just know he does this. He's flipping out about this. He sent me a copy of, or a link to this article before I even knew it was going to be in the show today. And he's like, dude, you have no idea. This is a life changer. This is huge stuff. We are all over this, blah, 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 blah. I still don't totally understand it. But hey, better optics means better cameras, means better, probably a future of actual enhance and zoom like in the movies, like for real. This is yet another step in that tech direction.
Yeah, I bet being a programmer of this type of stuff, like your friend Scott, is much more, would be very eye-opening, because of course I read this and I go, wow, sounds like magic, but are purple halos that big of an issue? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Raj.
Well, I was just saying, like, if you're a consumer, what this will manifest itself is, if you have a camera, especially if you use an SLR, oftentimes when you get lenses, especially zoom lenses, those are made up of compound lenses. And what you get when you take a photo is you get a purple edge to the very edge of your photo, and you'll see it if you zoom in. It's just a little purple haze. And that's one of the like bugbears of using those styles of lenses, which is why most people use primes, is that you get that. But being eliminated, that's huge, because it's something that's been with us for a generation or more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Engadget points out that the actual technology of optical compound lenses dates from around 1730. Now we've refined how they work, but the essential way they work hasn't changed in a long time. So this is a ridiculously momentous moment. I guess that's redundant. This is momentous for people in optics, because the upshot for us as consumers is we get cheaper, more lightweight lenses in our devices.
Yeah. By the way, this friend I mentioned would be a great guest on the show sometime, but he's also kind of weird. So I don't know if
So in other words, he'd make an excellent guest on the show.
He might make an incredible best guest you ever had. I don't know.
So what you're saying is he'd fit in really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does he listen to the show? Because now we know you're weird. And so
I don't think he does, but maybe.
You never know. Those lens guys. Hey, Amazon warned on Tuesday that some customer names and email addresses in the UK, the US, and across Europe were exposed due to a technical error on its website. The company says it's fixed the issue and informed customers who might have been affected. But Amazon did not say how many users were affected, how this exposure happened, or whether any of the exposed data was actually accessed by anyone else.
Yeah, it's not the best disclosure ever. I'm sort of on the side of Zach Whitaker, who took Amazon to task for not responding with a whole lot of information, if any, when pressed for details. On the other hand, it is just name and email address, and I'm not trying to belittle that, but it's an exposure of your name and email address. Names and email address have been exposed a lot. A lot of times people expose them themselves by putting their name and email address on the internet in public. Yes, you should have control about when that happens, but this is not personal data like social security numbers, health information, financial stuff. It's a very low risk item, and it was an exposure. And I think that's where I really do side with the folks criticizing Amazon, is letting us know how that exposure happened, I think, is important to assessing whether it was taken advantage of or not. Because exposure doesn't mean access. If they caught the fact that they were in public and no one else noticed, then no harm done. They may not know whether anyone noticed or not, and that's sometimes hard to tell. But knowing how it happened kind of helps me at least wrap my head around like, oh, okay, no one probably saw it, or, ooh, that's on a public server that shows up on some of these dark web search engines. That one probably did get accessed by people. But again, in the end, I think I don't want to let Amazon off the hook, but we should be careful about saying like, okay, but let's not overreact to this. It is less of an exposure than it could have been.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be a big deal for, and I agree with everything you said, Tom, that would be a big deal for me is if Amazon didn't disclose the number of users and it was some huge crazy number, because I'm just suspicious of everyone. So it's like, if you don't give me a number, then I assume it's actually quite a few people. Or if we find out later that the data was accessed and Amazon knew about it and just decided not to disclose it, that would be cause for real concern.
Yeah. And there's no reason to think that second thing happened at all.
Right.
If your email was thought to have been exposed, they've contacted you. Amazon has sent emails to anybody that they thought would be affected by this. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. Daily Tech Headlines will not be taking Thursday and Friday off, thanks to Rich Straffolino, who'll be filling in doing the headlines. So keep an ear out for those. Let's talk about the Wall Street Journal reporting its sources saying Amazon is out there trying to get retail stores, restaurants, gas stations to accept Amazon Pay. Amazon Pay is accepted in Whole Foods because Amazon owns Whole Foods. It's accepted in the Amazon stores that are out there, the bookstores that they've opened. And it usually works as a QR code rather than NFC. So it's not like Android Pay or Samsung Pay or Apple Pay. You just show a QR code and then they use that to access your account securely. And Bob's your uncle, you've paid. That's a benefit because if you're not someone with a smartphone, especially in developing markets where maybe smartphones aren't as common, you might still have a phone with a screen that can display a QR code, right? You may not have a phone that can handle NFC. You may not have an account like that, but maybe you do have an Amazon account. That's what Amazon's banking on. It made me think, though, that we're starting to run into a world, and now that more places are accepting NFC payments, and I'm more often running into logos that have the Android guy, have the Samsung logo, have the Apple symbol, that Visa and MasterCard are kind of becoming DOS. They're still there. They're still operative. They're still important, but they're getting pushed into the background because these other systems are running on top of them. And we're starting to see Apple and Google, particularly, and other big companies, and Amazon wants to be one of those companies, becoming our payment option. Are we okay with that? If you walk up and instead of seeing Visa, MasterCard, American Express, you see Apple, Google, Amazon?
Well, isn't it more like to me, it feels more like the difference between checks and credit cards. And, for the longest time, you could take a check anywhere, go to McDonald's, buy your food, give them a check at the window. Nobody does that anymore. In fact, nobody really accepts those anymore, but checks are still a thing. If you need to move some money around, you got to do a thing, pay somebody for a service. You still use checks. It feels like credit cards as a traditional way of paying, or I guess credit cards are becoming a traditional way of paying, and they probably won't go away, certainly not in the long term. But it does feel diminished. I mean, it does to me. The only problem I have is I don't love that the idea would be in the future or now or whenever that the way you buy anything is tied to a giant search engine company, a giant retailer, a giant device manufacturer, or whoever it may be. That's a little weird because now the battleground is all about what brand of thing do you use? And I guess the battleground was about Visa, MasterCard, Discover, whatever. And those were kind of a brand fight.
But it's not as if Visa and MasterCard, Discover, and the others didn't also have data on what you were buying. I mean, it's...
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole Equifax thing is based on that, right?
Exactly. Well, I use Apple Pay. Well, it's been every morning for a few weeks now because a local coffee shop accepts it and it works out nicely. But I mean, that's still tied to a Visa card that I've, hooked into Apple Pay. The idea of the QR codes with Amazon, because I've used that at Whole Foods, works like a charm. I feel like for anybody who's running a business, it's almost just like, does the point of sale situation seem cluttered? Does it work? What are the customers, clamoring for more of? And I don't see that many people. It depends on where you are, of course, but I don't see that many folks at my local coffee shop, for example, using my little tapper. In fact, half the time the baristas are charging it and I have to like ask for it. But
hold on. I will jump in here because I know like all of Australia is now standing up and yelling at you right now. Like that's because you're in the United States, right? Tapping is the norm in a lot of other countries. So
yeah, that's true.
Well, sure. But again, yes, it depends on where you are. And again, if the nation of Australia can spread the word to a lot of other places where people are like, I'm not using Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or anything. That's where this all drives forward.
Yeah, we're the backwards ones, though. I think this is where the U.S. centric nature of us living in the U.S. Does blind us, because tapping is common anywhere in the developed world except for the United States. Like we are behind that curve, but I still think we're catching up. I'm seeing it more often. The fact that CVS over here has it, the fact that almost every independent retailer shop that I go to has it. Where I have run into it being a mess is contractors. So I just bought a house. We just moved into a new house, had to have a sewer line replaced, had to have the sprinkler system worked on, had to hire a gardener, had to get some roofing repair done. Every single one of them wanted to be paid in a different way. Chimney sweep wanted Venmo. The roofer guy wanted a check. The sprinkler guy wanted a credit card. The sewer people were like, we can take multiple ways. Like it
but
seems. But
why is that a nightmare to you?
No, but well, because what if I'm not Tom Merritt, host of Daily Tech News Show, who has all these things?
I see.
And somebody's like, hey, can you pay with Venmo? You're like, oh, what's Venmo? I don't have that. Right. And somebody else is like, well, I want a check. And I'm like, check? I don't have a checking account. What are you, from the 1700s? Like it's not meshing. We used to have like cash or check. Those were your only ways to pay. Then credit cards came along. All right, cash, check, or charge. But now we've got 1,500 different options out there.
Yeah, it's I was just thinking about this, and I don't know if this holds any water or not, but if there was no such thing as credit cards up till now, and let's say we've been tapping and paying with phones, and there just was never that interim period where we had credit cards. And I know this is a little bit of a stretch, but just hear me out. It feels like if somebody tomorrow came out and said, guys, what if you could pay with this super thin piece of plastic that fits in your wallet? It's got a little strip on it. You can either manually enter the data or you can slice it or, swipe it on a thing. Okay. What if you could pay with that? How cool would that be? We'd all go, oh, dude, that's so cool. A little thin piece of nothing in my wallet. And my point is, I don't think credit cards are that uncool. And in fact, like Sarah said, a lot of these devices are already tapping into existing credit cards. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because at the end of the day, we've seen them forever. So we're kind of sick of them and we think of them as old hat, but they're kind of rad. If you think about it, this little card.
If someone did a Kickstarter for a credit card, it would actually be that one thing that allowed you to store all your credit cards on a card. It was like $50.
I remember that.
Fail, which it did. But no, what I was going to say is, if someone tried to spin this as a credit card, people would say, "Why can't I just have that on my phone?" Which is what people say about a lot of devices. Well, can't I just do that on my phone? I think that's what people want.
Yeah, I mean, and in my alternate history, there's no, I don't have enough ground to stand on, I don't think. But yes, I think people do want all their stuff on their phone. The bigger issue is, should the people who make the phones or have their names on the phones, should they be the ones that control the future of this? Or more importantly, why hasn't MasterCard, why hasn't Visa, why haven't those guys thought further ahead, made better deals maybe with these phone manufacturers? Maybe it doesn't matter because ultimately having that money flowing through the system is what Apple and Samsung and Google and everybody wants. They all want a piece of that. So maybe this is just one of those industries that's going to get split whether we like it or not. But yeah, it's just weird to think that one day those may be all the major names. What do you guys take? Oh, we take Amazon, Google, and Apple. And they used to say we take American Express, Discover, and Visa. It's just a very odd shift.
I think there's
yeah, unless you have to open an Apple bank account and a Google bank account, or what account, right? Take the word bank out of it. That would be really annoying to me. Otherwise, it's just a form of taking the money that's only in one place in the beginning. I don't know.
You have to have an Apple ID or a Google ID to use both. So you're basically opening an account of a sort.
I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I think consolidation is on the way in this arena, so it'll be interesting to watch.
Well, also very interesting to watch is our subreddit every day, because you subredditors give us really good stories. You can submit them and vote on others at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We're also on facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. In fact, I posted a cool announcement not 1 hour ago on our Facebook group. So if you haven't been there in a while, go check it out.
Do that. And then email us what you think. feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com, and we'll read some of your responses in the mailbag.
Correct. Like the one from Joe, who wrote in. He was agreeing with Patrick Bejaw's reservations about Google adding saved transcriptions to its call screening feature. Tom and I were like, it's no big deal. And he was like, well, I don't know. There might be some privacy stuff going on here. Joe says, I myself can picture a scenario where calling somebody and being sent to an automated Google Assistant, I may mutter a few choice things while having to interact with yet another phone bot, things I would never say to that actual person, and having those words transcribed and sent to the callee alongside my much more carefully worded voicemail. Get a little bit of that I thought I was on mute feeling just thinking about it. Most people don't consider interactions with Amazon's voice assistant or Siri or automated phone trees to be conversations, and might be unguarded in expressing frustration or asides to other people nearby. We know that these are machines or services and not actual people with feelings. But I think features like this blur the lines a little bit and may lull people who don't realize how it works into saying things that they otherwise wouldn't, and have unintended effects. Maybe you get unfriended too on the recipients. It's almost the flip side of the concerns that people had about Google Duplex potentially tricking people into thinking it was an actual person. Joe says, I'd almost prefer that scenario to be the opposite.
Well, two things. Duplex is the technology that's making this happen. And the other thing is, if you know you're talking to a computer, it's all about transparency. If you know that it's going to be transcribed, then you won't mutter. So, and that's kind of where we ended up yesterday, is they should make it clear if they don't.
And also, I think important to note is the transcription was already possible. It was just more limited. So having something that's saved doesn't mean that the person wasn't already seeing you mutter your choice phrases while they screened you in real time.
Yeah, I'm always reminded that it was 1992 that someone demoed for me. I worked for a computer company. Somebody demoed for me some very early, and I think it was Microsoft voice tech, Dragon something. I don't remember. It's a long time speaking. That's it. And it's me occasionally that we are just now seeing the promise of that being fulfilled.
Yeah.
So I just like to point that out. We were once way back. We're just getting there. So all these things are possible and more.
Well, we love it that you make it possible for us to hang out with you every Wednesday, Scott Johnson. Darn near anyway. Let folks know, besides hopefully having a really nice Thanksgiving, what you've been up to.
Well, I do have a new thing I'm doing that I may as well let people know about, because it's actually airing on Thanksgiving. Unlike most shows, I don't have that day, but we are doing this one by the request of my co-host. And you're like, Scott, what are you even talking about? We're now 2 episodes in, on our way to a third of I guess you can call it a couples cast, but for whatever reason, for all my time in podcasting, Kim and I, my wife, have never really thought about sitting down and doing something together. It just never really worked out that way. We didn't think about it. It was never really an option. Then she guest hosted on my morning show a couple of times, and it hit us. That was really fun. We actually have a really good chemistry. Why aren't we doing this more? So now we are. It's called Skim, the Scott and Kim Johnson Show, and it's on every Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain. Live, if you want to watch it that way at frogpants.tv. But if you'd rather get it on the podcast, frogpants.com/skim is where to find it. And we're having a really great time, and I think people might enjoy it. So come check it out and see why I hate Hallmark Channel Christmas movies and why she loves them.
Christmas Prince has a sequel. That's not Hallmark, but it's Netflix. Thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We have a special offer right now for 2 weeks only. If you become a patron or stay a patron between now and December 5th at 12 Pacific, you'll get a holiday postcard with a special message from one of us on the DTNS team. Remember, you have to give us your mailing address to get the card, which you can add in your settings. Sign up at patreon.com/DTNS.
If you got feedback for us, well, I've got good news, because we have an email address, and that email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Keep them coming, everybody. We're also live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC, and you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Again, off tomorrow for Thanksgiving and Friday, back Monday. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Hooray!
Skim.
Skim. It's
And
fun.
we were talking Skim before the show, and you just kept nice and quiet that whole time.
I know I probably should have said something. It's been really fun though. Like
That's so cool.
shockingly fun. People are starting to be real funny about it. They'll email in and go, "Dear Kim, really enjoy your show with your co-host Scott Johnson." Like they really are giving her the credit, and she deserves it. She's very
yeah, that's fun.
That's awesome. It's funny because like usually if someone comes to me with like, "Hey, I've got this idea," and my significant, I always say, "No, don't do it."
Yep.
But I also don't know how to have successful relationships, and you do. So that's where I think you guys might have something that's really got some legs.
Well,
all of the protein and none of the fat of the milk of human kindness.
That's right. Hey, that's not a bad tagline. I will use that.
Horrible tagline.
Yeah. Skim will keep your teeth strong.
There you go. Always always listen to Skim, which makes no sense.
It does a body good. Scott.
It is fun though. Like it's a chance for, she keeps me real honest as part of the fun. So I can't just go off in some weird tangent without her going, "All right, back it up. That's not how that went," or "This is not who you talked to," or whatever. And there's something really funny about it. So I don't know. It just worked out. We could have been doing this for years, and it just never occurred to me. Like
maybe it was the 3 children.
Maybe it could have been we were certainly
pretty busy.
But I think it just never like occurred to me. Even back in the heyday of Couples Cast, remember all those days when everybody had a show with their significant other or partner.
Radio was the prototype,
right?
Malta and Nora.
That's right. And I used to love that stuff.
Yeah,
and I just never thought about it. And she
wanted to do one with Eileen, but
you guys would do great. Like it's funny how maybe time is the trick, and you spend enough time with each other, and you just get to a place where you can riff in a way that maybe you couldn't 10 years ago. I don't know. Maybe not, but
it would be a terrible idea for me because all we would do is argue.
Well, so there's some of that for sure. Like this whole thing.
We have a podcast that you and I just argue on. Like that's
I know, but
stopping here.
Yeah, something so
congratulations, you're in a relationship.
Listen, I've been in the backseat of Tom and Eileen's car as they were trying to find a location. I've heard the back and forth.
Oh, what's the name of this show, Roger?
I like Who's in Your Wallet.
Who's in Your Wallet? That's
Who's
great.
in Your Wallet's pretty good.
JPEG is the author of that one. Some other good ones were Visa and MasterCard becoming like DOS. The world taps, and while we swipe, to swipe.
The world taps while we swipe.
That's pretty good too.
Purple Haze meta corrected.
Purple Haze.
Amazon pays your Uncle Bob. It's a very is that an English phrase?
Okay, when you said that, every time anyone says Bob's your uncle, I almost say because I have an Uncle Bob, and it's
actually have an Uncle Bob. Right, I forgot you. I forgot
like my uncle.
I don't understand it.
It's is it English or is it Canadian? Because I've only heard it from Canadians, but
I've heard it from growing up.
I've heard it, but it's one of those phrases where I'm like, I don't understand.
Does it mean just like there you go and there you go and there you have it?
There you have
Bob's
it.
your uncle.
Yeah, that's all it means.
The name Bob is so common that most people would have an Uncle Bob.
Maybe.
Dates back to 1887 when British Prime Minister Robert Cecil, aka Lord Salisbury, decided to appoint a certain Arthur Balfour to the prestigious and sensitive post of Chief Secretary for Ireland. Because the Prime Minister Bob was his uncle, it was used as a catchphrase for "you've got it made," as if Bob were your uncle, giving you this amazing post as Chief Secretary for Ireland.
I wonder if Lord Salisbury loves steak.
Only in high school cafeterias. That's the only place.
I love Salisbury.
He was a hungry man, you know.
Yes, he was. He had delicious cobbler too.
I had a friend
named Scott. Thing. Everything else is just a giant salt vehicle. But
I had a friend named Scott Salisbury, and he was this tiny little dude, and he hated Salisbury steak. That was his big thing. Had the last name, but couldn't eat it. It's the only Salisbury I ever knew.
I knew a Salisbury. Heidi Salisbury. Yeah.
What's that song? Salisbury something Hill.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill.
Oh, from not Peter Murphy. It's
Peter
Gabriel.
Gabriel,
The
yeah.
less well-known portion of Genesis.
Peter
Dude,
Gabriel.
not in my book. I think Gabriel's the bomb.
Oh, you don't like the drummer, now singer, frontman, now solo Disney artist?
I don't mind him. I just think that Peter Gabriel was special and made amazing music. And not even with Genesis. His solo stuff's just insane.
The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. The last great Genesis album before Peter Gabriel.
I mean, yeah.
Are you a Peter Gabriel fan to the point where you do not like Phil Collins?
No, I'll listen to Phil Collins. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
I actually think
some
he's
friends of
better than-
mine recently went to a Phil Collins concert. He was here in LA. And I posted something on Instagram, and there were all these comments of people being like, boo. I was like, I didn't realize. I know that they both were the front men, at different times, but I didn't know that there was like if you like one, you don't like the other.
Well, it might be because Phil Collins used to be the drummer for Genesis, and they just put him.
But he was a good singer. I don't know. He's good at both things.
Gabriel and Phil Collins were in Genesis together. Then Gabriel left. And when he left, Genesis became way more pop. So I think a lot of it has to do with people who really liked the more prog rock years of Genesis and blaming Phil Collins for making it mainstream.
He made it studio.
Yeah, it's a little like it's not a fair comparison, but it's like Jefferson Airplane turning into Starship eventually. It's like
most people say, look, when Peter Gabriel left Genesis, I could feel it coming in the air tonight.
Oh, Lordy.
That it would change.
Listen, Phil Collins made some real bangers. So
he seems to have an invisible touch.
Look, one of my favorite Disney soundtracks will always be freaking the Tarzan soundtrack. I think he was the perfect pick for it, and I love it. And I know a lot of people think I'm wrong, but I love that stuff. So it's fine. It's totally fine. We're not talking
hit maker. That's why he was
a hit maker. Susu Studio, man.
Abacab.
Susu Studio was the woman's name supposedly in the song.
I forgot about that one.
Oh, was her name?
Yeah, that was the name of the woman sung about in the song.
I didn't know that.
Her name was Studio?
Susudio or something.
Name.
Yeah,
it's not a real person.
It's not a real person, but in the context of the song,
in the context of the song, Susudio is the name of a woman.
Yes.
Land of Confusion's a great song. Billy?
Yeah, Billy, don't you lose that number.
Oh, it's probably a girl, Billy, or maybe it's I don't know. Who knows? There's probably some story there.
It's
but
that guy who's always losing in numbers, and he's like, oh, man.
Right.
Well, he should call Tommy too.
Write it down, Billy.
It should have been 8675309. That would have been easier to remember.
Jenny.
But the problem with Phil Collins is he never had a song as good as Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill or In Your Eyes or any of those. He never quite reached that kind of awesome. And so I'll give Gabriel they just both deserve credit for different things. It's fine.
In Your Eyes.
In Your Eyes. That's
you know what? There aren't 1,000 churches in anybody's eyes. You're being a little dramatic, Peter.
But you know what? That movie made I don't even remember the name of the movie.
Say anything.
Say anything. That's the best movie.
I always mix that up with Some Kind of Wonderful because it has a very nondescript.
I gave her my heart and she gave me this pen.
Yep. Fraser's dad was in it. Just a side note. John Maloney or whatever his name was in it. Who just died, rest his soul.
So John
he did?
Yeah.
He died in your arms tonight.
Not too long ago.
It's a cutting remark, Tom.
Something middle of the year, I think.
My crew.
There's talk of a Frasier reboot, like with all the same characters, and he'd be the only one that's not around.
And down goes Frasier.
I'd watch it.
Frasier was one of those shows where I was never going to be like, that's my favorite show. But I always enjoyed it.
Yeah, you'll like it.
So
it was just a very funny show.
It was supposed to be a spinoff of Cheers, right? Or no?
Yeah,
it was in fact a spinoff of Cheers.
Well, yeah, it's Frasier Crane from the bar.
Absolutely. Like there was an episode of Cheers where Frasier left to go to Seattle and start a radio show, and then the next thing you know, Frasier.
Well, and there were some crossovers, like Diane was.
Yeah, Diane showed up, and there was one where Woody came back, and Sam showed up. Like it was always crossover. It's probably the most successful successful spinoff in the history of TV, I think. Except maybe MASH, but that's not the same. That's a movie.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Frasier ran for
it's very successful.
over a decade, right? Yeah.
Hugely successful, won lots of awards, like was genuinely critically acclaimed, fan acclaimed. Like this doesn't happen very often with spinoff.
It was the vehicle for Sideshow Bob.
Remember Flo? Flo was not a good spinoff, as an example.
No, I don't remember Flo.
What was Flo a spinoff of?
Alice. Do you remember Alice?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Alice. Oh, okay. Flo. Kiss My Grits.
Yeah, Kiss My Grits Flo. It was a bad either. How about Enos from Dukes of Hazzard? Very bad. Terrible.
That show kind of went under after this. That there was that whole contract dispute with the guys who played Bo and Luke, and they replaced them with their cousins
with
Coy the season.
I think you're referring to Dukes of Hazzard now.
Yes, Dukes of Hazzard. Sorry.
Good.
Yeah, Coy and Vance were the cousins, and it was a very bad thing. It was not good. Not good, sir.
That show would not fly today.
We're just two good old boys. Never meaning no harm.
Now I'm in trouble with the law.
All you ever saw been in trouble with the law.
I don't know the actual words.
As a Hank Williams Jr. So,
was it Hank Williams or was it
Waylon Jennings?
Waylon Jennings. Sorry,
Waylon Jennings. Yeah. I don't know how we got here, but this is great.
It's a guy. It's a guy with a beard and a cowboy hat singing country songs.
Yeah, because Waylon used to do the little tag outs before they'd go to commercial.
Mm-hmm. They'd be jumping over a bridge.
The car in mid jump, like I don't know how the Duke boys are going to get out of this one.
Yep, they totally did.
After they crash yet another stunt car and need to roll out another one.
Oh, shocking! I almost swallowed my gum.
Yeah, I used to love that. And it was all filmed in the same back hills of California that they filmed MASH.
So what was interesting is that I wondered why the Hazard County never had paved roads, because all the roads seemed like dirt, something you could jump off. It seemed like the town was filled with convenient points to launch a car into the air.
Watch The Walking Dead. That's absolutely what all of Georgia looks like.
All of it.
All of it. All of it.
Every bit of it.
I never watched the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh,
I know. I think I was a little too young, so I probably wasn't allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was like, I don't know, went into reruns, it was like,
it is very much a show of its time.
Yeah.
I don't know that a car with a Confederate flag on it would
fly today.
Well,
no, it was vaguely racist.
It would not be without controversy. If someone
the only black guy I remember on the show was the sheriff from the neighboring county.
Yep, he'd come visit sometimes.
Well, they did have the Dukes of Hazzard movie that was not that long ago. So how did they tackle some of these?
They have the General Lee.
Yeah, they did, and they had a lot of black people in the movie. We just saw it for Film Sack, and it's actually older than you think. It was 2004, which I know isn't.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah,
no, that sounds about right, because Jessica Simpson was in it, and she was like real big deal.
She was at Peak Simpson.
Simpson,
Daisy.
Right?
Was she Daisy?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was Daisy, and Uncle Jesse was he sings. Don't let your baby. Willie Nelson. That's who it was.
The guy who was married to Rebecca Romaine.
Uncle Jesse.
John Stamos was in it.
Yeah.
Was he?
Weren't they married?
Yeah, they were. Rebecca Romaine Stamos just goes by. She's Romaine now, and she's very deadly, I hear on the news.
Yeah, she's murdering people.
Even if you wash, it's still.
You can't wash Rebecca Romaine enough and still not get sick. So be careful, everybody.
It's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing, because it's so absurd.
It's not either. I know. Totally agree. But yet somehow it is. I don't know why. She suffered and got sick and died. It's actually not a laughing matter, but
no.
The idea that she might
take it up with Rebecca. I mean, what's her problem?
Exactly.
Your company is making people ill.
Who?
It's Rebecca Romaine.
Oh! I thought you said a company. I missed it.
No, I did. That's like
you did. The Rebecca Romaine lettuce company of Dearborn, Michigan. Nailed it.
Nailed it. Well, I just scanned my most recent Google alerts for my name. I don't know if you guys even do that, if you did or still do. I just never turned it off. And I'm officially never in them anymore. It's all streets where something terrible happened, or perhaps a house is for sale on a Sarah Lane.
Oh, interesting.
But like, it's actually become kind of interesting where I'm like, oh, Milwaukee. All right. Sarah Lane up there too. Something bad happened up there. So sorry.
I wonder if Boulevard can be a last name. Joe Boulevard.
Yeah, why not?
For me, it's usually a fight with this Australian rugby coach with my name.
I always get it with my
author of today's Amazon press release about the new Amazon Voices is Tom Merritt.
Yes. Finally.
It's a Tom Merritt.
Right.
Another Tom Merritt.
Not the Tom Merritt.
I don't get my whole name. I just get Roger and the first letter C, and I get a lot of emails.
Well, what I get is that we're wrapping up the video. So we want to say goodbye to them. But what you should also get is if you're on the Discord or listening to Good Day Internet, stick around. There's more to come.